for the lighting assignment, how did it go for you? And did you learn from it?
It was definitely a bit harder at the beginning than I thought, but in the end it was pretty informative to study those lighting scenarios.
Some stuff here. You put the freckles on the egg.
Yes.
Nice. All right, some things I can point out with this. Ooh, that's really nice.
Yeah, I like this the reference image pretty much. This lighting looks so awesome.
Okay, so this seems to be something a bit off with the red ones, and I'll talk about that in a second. And one thing I wanted to kind of point out before that actually is the gradients feel like a little bit off, but I see them getting more controlled as you go. So it seems like it's something you self-corrected, which is good. Okay, so top left lighting and then red rim light. I think the key element that's missing here is two things. And the whole point of this is to, borrow the lighting information and then get it to look as believable as possible on the egg. But yeah, so the core shadow is really strong here. It's almost black. Now, in that lighting scenario, it might actually look like that, because rarely do shadows go to that much of a black if there's any ambient light. But over here, there's no core shadow to delineate like this group and that group. So you just be careful to look for these distinctions and separations between the two. And now when you zoom out, it really differentiates. So that's one thing. And the reason is, especially with the color red, is it's really saturated at a very low value compared to most other colors. So if I took this pretty bright red, but I put it next to this, purple lavender color, the red doesn't really stand out as much until you make it really dark around the red, right? So that's why I think the core shadow needs to be pretty strong here. And then there's also a loss of saturation. So we want to make sure it feels pretty saturated. So even in the most saturated parts on the egg, it's pretty gray, but over here, look how it's in the top right corner of the hue cube. So kick that up all the way and just make sure we sneak that in there. That way you get the effect of contrast as a result of relativity rather than taking this and moving it towards white. Now granted, it does go a little bit towards white right here, but that's not the strength of the contrast. And so you could add a little bit there, but we can merge that down. Notice the difference. I probably went a little bit too dark with the core shadow, but that's the idea. Something over here, and this is just going to be a matter of rendering or how light works. I think the colors and the light and the blending is fine for the most part, but if we just make this a low poly egg and just subdivide that into these polygons, this would just kind of take us back to lesson 1, where the light, if the light source for that left light is over here to the left somewhere, it's going to only be hitting certain polygons, like maybe these, and have a bit of a fall off going out this way. And then, having said that, what that would look like is you'd have a kind of core shadow along this. We'll keep this pink. And then the blue will kind of have a fall off this way. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, in less words, the light should follow the geometry. Like that. And so you can tell that one looks kind of flat and the other is more accurate to it. And here as well, there should be a fall off conforming to the wireframe of the egg shape. So that's it for those. Yeah, that little tiny highlight is really effective.
Yeah, I had definitely problems placing some highlights, but on this page it worked.
Yeah, I agree. There is one thing, however, that I could help with. Yeah, it's another case where the core shadow could be stronger. between the magenta and the blue. So it'd be more like that. But also, there's a certain warmth in the saturation when it goes from yellow to magenta. So you have it's kind of deep magenta. Let's go darker than that. Darker than that. And then you have the warm. Well, let's say it goes to yellow, right? Maybe a bit brighter, less saturated. But the thing is, when these two colors are just next to each other, or blending into each other, if you look at the transition, it's kind of gray. Not gray, but there needs to be a borderline, or a transition color of saturation, at least to make it look more appealing. So this is where you can add a bit of warmth, like orange, and watch what happens. It kind of introduces a level of saturation that makes it more, I guess, complete. And you can see that happening where it goes from magenta, there's a bit more of a saturated orange, and then it goes to the yellow. So over here, we're missing that warmth. I can see you have a little bit over here, but it needs to be a little bit stronger between these two realms. And then even the yellow should be a little bit more saturated. Right. So I guess I'm pointing this out so that you remember to look for these things, because it might just be so subtle that it's hard to notice until you've done it a bunch. So this will help you out.